and welcome to the Raising Kyndell podcast. My name is Marsh Naidu, and I blog at raisingkyndell.org, where we curate resources for families experiencing disability. On today's episode 163, I'm chatting with Kyndell Harkness, who up to recently was a photojournalist at the Minnesota Star Tribune. Kyndell talks about Operation Metro Surge, and this ties in with a recording we did 2 episodes ago with Kristen and Molly from Mama Bear podcast, in which we discussed Operation Metro Surge as well. Grab your cup of coffee, put your feet up, and get ready for some meaningful conversation. Today, I am joined by Kyndell Harkness, who is a photojournalist. She has worked at the Minnesota Star Tribune, but she has transitioned into another role. She's CEO and founder of Infinite Voices. Welcome to the Raising Kyndell podcast, Kyndell.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Kyndell.
Oh, yeah. It's a funny one. So, how did the girl who grew up in Harlem wind up in the Midwest? It's always a fun one. I was, started with photography pretty early on. Did it in high school for fun, and then went to school at Michigan State, which is how I got to the Midwest. I've worked at some kind of newspaper since I was 18. And I basically took one break, one summer, because I was just like, okay, I'm going to have what is it like to have a job that is not a journalist? I should probably have one of those before I go into this career. And so I did lawn maintenance for a summer, mowed lawns. New York City girl who'd never mowed a lawn in her entire life, mowed lawns that summer. So it was pretty. Did a bunch of interning around the U.S. My first job was in Virginia. I stayed there for 5 years and then got the job at the Star Tribune and was there for 25 years and covered, it took me to Brazil, which was great, all over the state, all over the U.S. The thing that I love about journalism, about photojournalism too, specifically, is you get to see the full spectrum of humanity, like people on their best days and worst days, and how we sort of, how people show up differently. And it was super helpful for me as sort of a, weaving what humanity is supposed to be like, right? Like how do we actually interact with each other? So doing that kind of work in different states, in the South, in the North, in the Midwest, and in the West Coast, there are differences in how we respond. And so it's been fun to see that. And, as a photojournalist, you can only be, as a writer, you can work in the past and the present and the future pretty easily. As a photojournalist, you can only work in the present. You have to be there and be with people. And so that amount of time with different kinds of people is really shaped who I am, but also shaped how I walk through the world and what I can sort of offer in terms of help for folks.
Kyndell, I came across your work in an opinion piece that you wrote in the Minnesota Star Tribune, and it was shortly after Renee Good and Alex Pretty, their fatal shootings in Minnesota. And your piece really resonated with me, and I would like to attach that to the show notes. I'm a fan of LinkedIn, and so I did look you up in LinkedIn, and I just thought you have the neatest portfolio, and that was the head of culture and community. Please tell us more, because I don't believe I've ever heard that before.
It's a weird space to be in, but it's the right space for me. So after George Floyd was killed, there were a lot of different newsrooms who were having that moment of sort of a racial reckoning inside, and so we had ours too, where a bunch of the journalists of color got together. We talked through what it is that we needed in terms of support and help. There was a disconnect between management and even our colleagues about how things were working and how things were sort of not equitable. And so we came up with a list of demands, and one of those demands was a role that would oversee the solutions that we had in place. How do you create an equitable hiring practice? Journalists tend to just fly by the seat of their pants because the work is the work and not actually taking time to have a process around what hiring looks like. How do you promote? Are you tracking things? So the job that I had in the newsroom wound up being this job that once I got it, it was an assistant managing editor job. Once I got it, I created like 7 different committees that worked on issues like across the newsroom. And it's just like, how do you create a sense of belonging? What do people need in order to feel like they're wanted? This is home, but also like they're moving forward. Um, uh, so yeah, like in 2 years, I built all that stuff. And things were moving in the right direction. And then we got a new publisher, and he was just like, "Wait, what do you do? Like, what is that job?" And it was hilarious. And so like he asked me, like we had met like 3 times, and I'm like, "Okay, dude, what do you want?" And he's like, "I'm thinking about you not doing just that for the newsroom, but for the company at large." And so I went from the newsroom into this head of culture and community. And so like we just sort of figured out what a name would be for this role. And it was sort of newspapers are just like any other company. There are people who do things. And so there are these silos that have been created over time. And so how do you get people together so that they're working with purpose in the same direction? And so I built a bunch of stuff for that piece, but also how does the organization, this news organization, relate to the communities that it's supposed to serve? And so part of building that relationship is listening. And so we did a bunch of listening tours, so we could like hear from people, reflect back to the newsroom and to the rest of the company what we were hearing, and then go back in a year and see if they've noticed the change. And so, how do you build trust? Trust is a relationship. And so you have to have a sense of sitting down when it's not transactional, when you don't need something or want something for them, and you're having a conversation as humans about issues that we're all kind of facing. And then, like a part of journalism is empowering people to make their own decisions. And part of that too is like being able to bring them together so that they can come up with their own solutions and to meet each other. And so, our Minnesota Matters tour that we did for 2 years was really about that kind of work, the listening to them and then us reflecting, but also making space for them to listen to each other, and know what's great about the geographic place that they live in.
In our community, which is primarily the disability community, Kyndell, inclusion and belonging, I mean, that's like our bedrock. But also for us to build networks within our community so that we can support it internally, but also convey that externally to the community at large, right?
Yeah.
So we are just not siloed. So if I had to transition that thinking to the newsroom, it seemed to me like what you were trying to do is create just diversity by bringing diverse voices to the space itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you perhaps lead into why that diversity of voices is important in a newsroom?
Your difference is an expertise. Just like when I make this analogy because it resonates with newsrooms because we've had so much gun violence. But like if there if there was a person, a reporter who came to you who was a gun owner and had knowledge of guns, and you're writing a story about that, or the shooting happens or whatever, you would be smart enough to be able. It would be nice to have somebody on staff who would be able to explain like how this happened or why this happened if you're digging deep into some kind of shooting, right? Like that is an expertise to have, right? And so when we are writing about different communities that we're trying to serve, having people who have that experience that are known to that community, like that matters. Like there's not it's not that any journalist can't cover any community, but there there is less barriers, less learning that certain folks, if you're from that community, be able to like um, you get to the meat of the story a lot faster, and you build trust more quickly because of it. Like diversity matters just to cover each other's blind spots. Um, I remember my good friend Allie would be in the news huddle, and she was the only Muslim, and she would have to say, she's like, is anybody doing anything on Ramadan? And she would text me at the, and just be like, why do I always have to be the one to bring it up? But it's just like she was there. So if she brought it up and she's like, lamenting the fact that she has to do it, but if she wasn't there, would we have covered it, right? And so that's that piece. And so like, this happened years ago, and so like she told me that once, and then I'd like put it on my calendar. I'm like, okay, she doesn't have to always do that, and that's where that allyship and that comes into play. Is that if you know that this person is having to carry this burden, like you should pick that up too. Like it shouldn't just be them. And
Kyndell, you are in Minnesota,
yeah.
and you are in Minneapolis. So about 2 weeks ago, we spoke to two moms now, and they are from the Mama Bear podcast, and that was on episode 161. They are in Duluth. Um, but they have friends or family members living in Minneapolis itself. So we were able to get some primary source, stories and experiences. But I would very much like to hear your perspective of what is currently happening in Minneapolis as far as Operation Metro Surge.
Yeah, things have slowed in terms of uh, how they've decreased the amount of ICE officers who are here. I think there are only about 600 now. Only 600. It still sounds
Oh, that's
ridiculous,
good.
right? Um, and so uh they're how they're approaching it now is different, and so they are being more strategic. Before they were just flooding the zone. I felt like it was more like a photo op than anything else in terms of
Right.
like how they were showing show of force, right? And now um they're sort of um they're being a little bit more strategic, so you don't see as much. The thing that really about the whole Metro Surge and uh, Minneapolis's response to that in terms of like mutual aid, and the support that they've done, like that piece has not gone away. The I think the after the announcement of the de-escalation of um, Metro Surge, donations fell off quite significantly, but the people, the communities and the blocks that have band together are still together and are still, because there are still families trapped in houses who don't feel that it's safe to leave. I live probably 5 to 7 blocks away from where Alex Preddy was killed. And so, um, there's still free concerts that are happening to raise money. The Star Tribune is tracking where the money is actually going, and it looks like it's going to people, which also is like very heartening that it's allotted to the Immigration Law Center for to help folks once they're detained. So yeah, like this horrible thing happened, and the Minnesota response was the right response. After going through, as a journalist, going through George Floyd, Philando Castile, we had a lot of police killings in the city, in the Twin Cities. And so watching their response, like I wound up going to like a photographer's bar, like right after Renee Good was shot. It was actually my going away party for 25 years of service at the paper, and I was like, are there going to be people here because everybody's probably at work? Well, they showed up, and our question, because we've all seen this, was just, how is Minnesota going to respond? And, the idea was like, were they going to take the bait? Like it was clear that it was that, would there be rioting? What would be the solution for calm? And we didn't know, like it was hard to predict at that point how we were going to go. And the response with singing and whistles and whatnot was the right response.
Yes. Yes.
And the amount, like yeah, the civic engagement in Minnesota has always been really, really high. These people read their news, and so the response has been right. And so now it's just like, how do you've built this amazing network of neighbors, and how do you keep that going, and that support going beyond, like, what have we learned, is going to be the question going forward. And how do we maintain this, not necessarily like this level of commitment, but this level of engagement, right? Just engaging with your neighbors in a way that you've never had before. And hopefully it makes us better, and brings us all more together. And so the summer will be interesting because in the winter, like, nobody sees each other because it's too cold.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy. It's too cold. Like, and then as soon as it warms up, like everybody's outside. So when everybody comes outside, how folks are greeting each other, what does engagement look like, is going to be really interesting.
Thank you for that, Kyndell. I appreciate you giving us that first person experience here. talking about the news, right? So we all get comfortable. We used to like switching on that channel we love and or getting onto that podcast we love. And then sometimes it's just a matter of that's our only news, right? And there can be danger in that, especially in a time that's so polarized.
Yeah.
Any advice on that?
Yeah. Uh, yeah. Like I've been doing a lot of meditation, going to my meditation classes, and so like, um, we talk about the uh, we are like what we are experiencing now is we have all created, right? We are all responsible for, you know, what's happening right now. And so our response is to, um, as much good as you can do for the world, this is what you do. And a part of that good that you can do is to educate yourself, right? And just be in the know and being accepting. I think that people can be I watched as the first time um, Trump was elected. I watched my friends who I have people on both sides
Yeah.
in my family and my friend group. And I keep it that way on Facebook so I can see what everybody's saying. So there were so many people I watched on Facebook years ago who divorced themselves of people who did not agree with them. And um and the algorithms on our phones um move us towards the things that move us towards confirmation bias. That is what they're designed to do. They are designed to point you in the same direction all the time and bring you things that seem similar to the things that you want. So if you are not intentional about seeking out other information, seeking to challenge yourself, um, seeking to sit in discomfort and listen to other people, um, we are not in a place of learning. And so, to be a student, um, to be a lifelong student is the thing that matters. And so a part of that student, like being intentional is a part of that learning, that curiosity. And so, I'm always just like, if you're looking for better information or looking for different information, I encourage you to be a journalist and to like a really good journalist is not just asking one person. They're trying to get to the source, the people who were first there to see and discern. But they're also checking it with other information. They're checking it with data. So you can have an opinion about things, but then stress test it. Get information that maybe challenges you, get different kinds of information. And then, like, I'm always just like, especially with people online who do this a lot, I'm like, I always go to LinkedIn. I'm
Yeah.
like, who are you? And like, how are you attached? Like, you know, like, who owns you? Right?
Who's
And
your
so,
boss?
like,
Yeah.
who's your boss? Who's your boss? And, it may or may not make a difference who your boss is, but actually having that information allows you to weight what they're saying. And so it's not necessarily to disregard somebody because they're next to somebody or whatever. It is to weight it to say, like, oh, these are the factors that may have shaped this person's opinion about something. And just like trying to discern opinion from fact is really hard these days. Um, especially for our young people, for us
Yeah.
all, really. But uh, just knowing like what the scientific method is and sort of like that test and failure around the data and understanding like, okay, how long has this person been doing this kind of work? Or how long, like, Pew Research for a reason. Like they have been
Mhm.
um they vet their stuff pretty well. And so um yeah, just being being curious and allowing yourself to be uncomfortable with I always there's one podcast that I remember, I can't remember who it was, but they talked about listening not just to hear but to be changed by what you hear. Um like having that kind of openness to know that you're not always right.
That's
Um
right.
and
Yeah.
um and just being able to like take in, well, what if they were right? What if I'm wrong? So what does that mean? And just following and being curious about that um, allows for so much growth. And then you can find the similarities. I always check if the enough data points tell me um, that this is a thing and there's a through line. The through line's probably pretty accurate.
Going on to infinite voices. Tell us more. Let's get into the meat and potatoes.
Yeah. This is always funny. Uh, I have in pretty much every newsroom that I've ever worked in, I've been the newsroom therapist. Like people come
Yeah,
to me, we're just like, okay, so and so is um I don't know how to tell so and so this, and I'm just like, okay, say these words, they hear this. And so a lot of the like head of culture and community job was a lot of that, especially the one that I had in the newsroom where it was so like now that I had the title, I had just like droves of people coming and just like um both both parties would be mad. Like so and so doesn't know blah 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 and so does. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, okay, here you. You're going to have another conversation with them, but they meant this. This is what they were trying to say. Say these words. And then I go over here. I'm like, okay, this is what they meant by what they said. Say these words to them when you have the next conversation. And then they go and they would talk. It would be better. And then they would come and report back. And then I would tweak. And um, so that was my like 5 years of building stuff, but also like handling personal stuff. And in the course of building all of the sort of the internal cultural infrastructure at the Star Tribune, I started having friends reach out and ask me questions. And then sometimes they would ask with their teams. And so like I went to my college buddy Anthony and I was just like, look, man, I keep on giving out this advice for free. Like I should be charging. Like I should be in a consultant. Like what is going on? He was just like, you've got this full-time job that's busy. And he's just like, Kyndell, we're gonna set up a time and we're gonna get this done. So he helped me like build the strategy, build the brand, pick out stuff, and so like in the spring, like almost a year ago, like we were having conversations around what to do. And my plan was like I've got a teenager and and I was like, okay, 3 years, he'll graduate. I can sort of slowly build my consultancy over time and then, launch with the new business. Way, that sounds great. And then the newspaper offered a buyout. And my old boss, I was talking to her and she's like, I was thinking about you with this buyout. And I was like, what do you mean? She's just like, when were you going to leave the Star Tribune? And I'm like, well, in about 3 years. She's like, you can leave now with money or you can leave 3 years with no money. And I was just like, okay, I guess I'm leaving. I'm like, so like, my wife, she left kindergarten teaching after 16 years and has been doing like building house stuff, and that and so I was the sole breadwinner, and so we had to make a huge decision to like, are we going to take this leap into this new job? I'll have 6 months of severance, and will this work, right? And so I talked to a whole bunch of people, and we're just like, you know what, we're just gonna do it. We're gonna see what happens. And there were contingency plans just in case anything went wrong, right? And so like, you know, to leave the Star Tribune in December and, start my business in January, typically the slowest month for anything, that seemed like a mistake, at least a little bit. But, uh, but like I had lots of conversations about the work. Like everybody, every company has to deal with the amount of change that we're dealing with. And they have humans in these jobs. And the toll on the humans is real. And how do you get a team to work together towards a goal, but and also be able to be nimble enough to weather change? And I can't tell you, like the news industry has gone through so much change in so many ways. That not only change within itself in the model and the business model, but also the world is constantly changing and moving, and the news cycle is insane. And so knowing that piece, like, and having to navigate human emotion, human toll, burnout, um, as well as trying to innovate at the same time, and push away norms and bring people together. Like that's a lot. And so in the last 5 years, I've learned a lot, about like the job of journalist taught me how humans act under just about any situation, and then bring that into um, like the corporate setting and looking internally, and then building structures that allow for connectivity, um, in a crazy time. And so like now I'm just like, okay, like all of the stuff that I've learned, now I can apply to this new role. And so it's been fun. Like I like the idea of going in and um, helping people to where they can fish for themselves. Like that's my goal. Like I don't want to stay. I don't want a job. I don't want a job with your company. I just want to come in, help you fish, and then leave. Because it's just like I don't need a job. I've had a job for like I've been working since I'm 13. I just want to just like go in, love on you, make sure you're okay, put some things in place. If you do what I say, it should work. And the part that I keep on telling people is like culture work is time. It's a 2 to 4 to 3 to 5 year commitment in terms of actually seeing it flip on itself. Where it's effortless and it becomes a part of culture, right? So, you know, my goal is to get people up and running and to have super users who believe in the path, that have the plan, and then they continue the plan and grow the plan as things shift, and like having that mindset of like, this is not going to look the same way. Like I'm going to come in and it's not going to look the same way 5 years from now, because you have done things have shifted and you have built on it. Like we are just building the skeleton so that you have a strong foundation to sort of morph it into something else. But yeah, that part is exciting to me.
That sounds amazing. It's just like you setting up a workplace that is human centered. I mean, I don't know what else. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And
you can have a business strategy, but you also have to have a people strategy that scales to that business. And once you have a people strategy, any other part of the business will just happen because you're moving in a way that feels caring to them, and they will do whatever for you.
Kyndell, you have been so generous with your time. Thank you so much for the opportunity to find out about Infinite Voices and the work that you're doing, as well as currently what's going on in Minneapolis. Are there any words that you would like to leave us with today, or any words of encouragement, or just whatever's on your mind?
Yeah, I just think there are always a couple of things like that always being a student, always being curious. I think if you can move through life in that space, um and when you're at the table, whether it's a boardroom or uh like at your school or anywhere, it's just like, who haven't we heard from? I always ask that question in meetings, like, who's not here, who can't talk for themselves, that we're talking about, right? Like, and whose voices are not here. I always like that allows for there to be like that intentional thought, and we do this a lot in newsrooms or a lot in the news huddles, because then you're just like, oh, well, this story is about this, but we don't have that voice here. There might be something that we miss, right? And so it's always looking for that missing voice. And even like in the day to day, it's just like if you're have an opinion about something, but like what voice are we not hearing that is closest to what this experience is? Because hearing that, I think, is important. We do a lot of stuff online these days, and being in person matters. I think too, a lot of the work that I'm going to probably be doing is a part of that. Like, we lost so much during COVID. We lost our ability to be with each other and know how to act when we're talking to other humans in person. I've watched so many uncomfortable conversations, or young reporters who want to call on the phone or text but don't want to go and to the person because they feel a little nervous. And I like being in a place and seeing people's body language matters. It tells us so much more than a text or an email can. So like, get out, be curious, be intentional about who you talk to.
Thank you for your time. I will get to working on this get to working on it. It'll probably be in 2 weeks, and then I will send it to you. But definitely want to stay connected and learn more about the work that you do, and just wishing you all the best.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This was it was fun. It was fun to talk.
It's fun to talk for sure. Well, you have a good one, okay? Say hi to the family. Talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
Bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
As always, thank you for listening along on the podcast today.
As Kristen and Molly described in episode 161, and Kyndell also talks about today in 163, mutual aid is still being needed by families impacted by Operation Metro Surge. For organizations that you could perhaps look towards, Stand with Minnesota is one of those organizations that has been organized by the Wilson Foundation. Please continue to hold the people of Minneapolis in our hearts and in our memory as well in this new cycle that changes, it seems, every second. As always, thank you for listening along. Please take the time to share this episode, and I look forward to talking with you on the next. We would appreciate a rate and review, which you could leave on your podcast platform. Leaving a review on Apple will allow this podcast to be found by those seeking it. As always, get to the top of your mountain. This is Mosh Naidu signing off.